Hello everyone, this is part 26 of What If Naruto Had a Proper Teacher, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Kakashi led his army to the meeting point with the Suna forces. Tsunagakure had held firm to the alliance and had come with a sizable force. The commander this time was Yura, a skilled jonin. Kakashi knew he was an A-ranked shinobi from the bingo books and a rock of stability for Suna after the revelation that their Kazekage was dead. Kankuro was with him as well. His puppets had been helpful, though not necessary, when they had crushed Iwagakure's attempt to break the encirclement. Naruto took off his Anbu mask and waved. Kankuro-san, good to see you again. Have you made any new puppets? Sakura-chan really liked your last one. The puppet user shook his head. Kakashi could sense that he was intimidated by Naruto despite the genial face that he portrayed everywhere except for the battlefield. He invited Yura to his command tent where he had the map of the area. We'll travel together today and rest for the night. In the morning we will look to array ourselves at the southern entrance of Omegakure. We will not be surrounding the village. If possible, we would like to allow the civilians and any non-Akatsuki to retreat if they wish. Yura frowned, but won't that allow the Akatsuki to escape? Kakashi simply replied, no. If they wanted to escape this battle they could do so easily. They want to capture Naruto. During the actual fight we will attempt to stop them from retreating and go for the killing blow whenever possible. The Suna commander nodded. They discussed the best way to array their forces. It was decided that Kakashi's team would have Naruto's Kage Bunshin lead the way. The clones would ferret out any traps and gauge the initial level of resistance. From there Kakashi's team and Asuma's team would strike from the right and the left. The bulk of the Konoha force would enter behind them. Suna would join in behind them and a small but decent force would remain under the command of Tsunade Senju. She would be in charge of the medical teams. She would also have Sai and several clones on hand to provide aerial protection. Yura agreed to the plan and added, I'll leave several of my best shinobi to protect Tsunade-sama while she heals our wounded. I'm sure she could handle herself, but if she is fighting she won't be healing. Kakashi agreed and the plans were set. Tomorrow battle would be joined in Omegakure. Fuyu and her team were in position. She had lost 2 shinobi crossing into Hai no Kuni. 18 Jonin-level assassins armed with Kinjutsu would be more than enough. Konohagakure had introduced a new way of fighting wars and Kumogakure had adapted. The idea of using Fuinjutsu scrolls to store explosives and shrapnel had been brilliant. Fuyu had to hand it to the pink-haired bitch. She had stumbled across something that would change the world. Now it was Kumo's turn. They had placed hundreds of storage scrolls that packed nothing but explosive seals. Each explosion could level a building and they were now secreted all over the capital city of Hai no Kuni. The only place they hadn't stored the Fuinjutsu bombs was in the palace itself. She had deemed it too risky. If they caught one of her Kinkaku force with them it would spark an investigation. That didn't mean the fire daimyo would escape. While his city burned, Fuyu and her team would kill him and his family. All she had to do was wait for the signal that indicated Konoha had launched the attack on Omegakure. While their best were in the field she would carve out the heart of Hai no Kuni. Once the daimyo was dead the Raikage planned to prop up one of the man's distant relatives as the new daimyo. Chaos would descend and Fuyu and her team would take on her next targets in Konohagakure itself. And then, we'll have a reckoning Anko Mitarashi. Kankuro stared at Yura in shock. No. This can't be happening. How did Temari convince Baki? This is insane. This has to be a mistake. Yura firmly shook his head. No, it is not. Baki-sama was convinced by your sister's arguments. I'm sorry but we have no choice. In the end it will be for the good of the village. Konoha has become too strong. Kankuro sat down heavily. Yura hadn't bothered to lower his voice thanks to the privacy seals around their tent. You don't understand. We are fucked. Have you even seen them in battle? They rip apart shinobi like they were rag dolls. Our job isn't to question. We need to obey the Kazekage and pick the opportune time to strike. Kankuro shivered. He would have to face them. The monsters of his generation, the team that killed Orochimaru, Gaara, Itachi, Han and Kakazu. What the hell was he supposed to do against that? Yura filled the silence. Kakashi's team will be in the forefront of the battle with the Akatsuki. We shouldn't worry about dealing with them. Instead, we will focus on their support lines. Tsunade will be the enemy you will need to prepare for. Kankuro barked out a laugh filled with nervous tension. It says something when fighting one of the Sannin is the better of the two options. Yura frowned at him. Do not underestimate your abilities. You and Temari were given the best trainers. You are one of the strongest shinobi Sunagakure has to offer. We will also have the advantage of surprise and numbers since we will not attack until the Konoha forces are engaged with the Akatsuki. Kankuro wasn't convinced. Tsunade was one of the Sannin. Before Kakashi trained the Leaf's new monsters, they were the scariest things that walked. Each of them had cage-level strength and had survived more battles than any 10 other shinobi combined. And now he had to face one of them. If by some miracle I survive this, I'm going to fucking kill Temari. Break. Asuma hadn't slept much that night. He was too eager and anxious to finally get revenge. The Akatsuki had taken the greatest thing that had ever happened to him and had ripped it away. Kurenai had died a shinobi's death. She had completed her mission and kept her team safe. But she was still dead. Asuma knew that hole in his spirit would never be healed. But the blood of the Akatsuki would make him feel a hell of a lot better. His training had been brutal, but he was at the top of his game. He also was leading a brilliantly powerful team. Neji was a prodigy that had grown into one of the village's most powerful taijutsu specialists. Rock Lee wasn't quite as good due to the lack of a powerful dojutsu. That statement was true until he opened the gates. Then Lee could keep up with the best there was and go even further. The team was rounded out by a weapons expert who could provide brutal long-range support and had a number of close-range options as well. He was impatient to get on with it all. They had arrived at the outskirts of Omegakure. A few clones had gone in and requested Omegakure to surrender. That hadn't happened, and now hundreds of cage bunshin swarmed into Omegakure proper. The impossibly tall buildings seemed to consume the clones, but evidently there hadn't been much resistance yet as they were all still waiting. Asuma lit a cigarette while he waited. Really? Now? Tenten admonished him. She didn't like his smoking habit. Asuma just shrugged and ignored her. It wasn't the first time someone had complained about his smoking, and it wouldn't be the last. If he was trying to be stealthy, he wouldn't smoke, but this was going to be a straight-up brawl. No need to worry about the smell clinging to his clothes. I wonder if these suits have an odor repellent. Those seals can do just about everything. It wouldn't surprise me if Sakura added it on a whim. Asuma's own suit wasn't particularly special. He had a few tricks, but primarily it was just additional weaponry he could send hurtling at his enemies. He almost had declined the offer to wear it. It really wasn't his style, but in the end Kakashi had asked if style mattered more than killing every last one of the Akatsuki. Manipulative bastard. Overhead he saw the strange creations the pale guy had drawn. There were 5 of them up there. 3 of them were helmed by Naruto clones, while a Sasuke clone and a Kakashi clone rode the remaining 2. They were there to scout as well as keep the crazy bomber from Iwagakure at bay. If any of those clay creations came near his team, it would be Asuma's job to blow them away. Come on, let's get this show on the road already, he muttered impatiently. Break. The heavy rain showed no signs of letting up. Naruto had his Anbu mask on while he waited for the clones to encounter opponents. Only 1 clone had been destroyed so far. There was hardly any resistance. Only a few Amnin who were Genin or Chunin at best. Naruto's limit was 4 clones on standby brimming with Senjutsu energy. It would have been nice if he could make dozens of clones doing that, but it required substantial chakra reserves to use Senjutsu. When he did his initial cage bunshin to create 4 clones, his chakra was evenly split and they had just enough to fully go into Sage mode. He had tried it with 5 clones and it hadn't worked. The real Naruto was also in Sage mode, and that meant he absolutely knew the Akatsuki hadn't fled. He sensed a number of massively powerful chakra signatures with his Senjutsu senses. While he couldn't maintain Sage mode for very long, he could re-enter it as long as he was out of combat and sitting still. The clones were a shortcut to re-enter Sage mode in the middle of a battle. Naruto felt a dozen clones die rapidly as he received their memories. Kakashi-sensei, we have Kisame leading a group of skilled shinobi. A missing nin from Kusa, a Kaiten specialist, and a missing nin from Kiri, he's a Kenjutsu specialist. Also we have 2 individuals with weird piercings on their body similar to what the reports said Yahiko had on his body. One of them seems strangely mechanical in nature and is able to fire explosive projectiles. Naruto saw the battle that had played out from the memories of the clones. A dozen clones had charged and stopped on a dime to unleash Futon, Shinkugyoku, wind release, vacuum bullets. The hail of wind projectiles had done little damage. Kisum took the lead and his massive sword seemed draw the Futon projectiles into it. The others dodged the attacks easily enough and the mechanical-like creature countered with a barrage of missiles. One clone jumped into the path of the missile to test their potency and give Naruto the memories of what had occurred immediately. The others dodged and then sped into close combat with their katanas. Kisum had more than earned his reputation and had easily defended himself. And as soon as one blow was blocked, the Bunshin would dissipate and the energy was sucked into Samehada. Dai Munashi dueled with another clone and his skill was great, but the clone's was even better. The Kiri Kenjutsu specialist was flabbergasted at a mere clone driving him back. Luckily for him, the more human-looking overly pierced Akatsuki member dashed in with a black rod he pushed out of his hand and used as a weapon. Naruto felt the memories of the clone as it got frustrated by being unable to get past the guard. The Kaiten specialist sent Kaiten, Hosenka no Jutsu, fire release, Phoenix Sage fire technique, at a batch of clones. While the clones were able to dodge the swarm of miniature fireballs, the damage to ground caused debris to lash out in random directions, popping a few of the clones. It only took a scratch to dissipate a cage Bunshin and the Kusa-nin knew it. It hadn't taken long with Kisum at the forefront for the katana-wielding clones to be defeated. Naruto briefly described the abilities he saw to Kakashi, and Kakashi used his shortwave radio built into the Anbu mask to relay that his team was going to engage. All team leaders please avoid Section 3C on the map. We will engage Kisum Hoshigaki and a minimum of 4 ranked shinobi that are with him. Asuma's voice came through the airwaves, Roger that. Meanwhile, we've got a giant centipede and an ox 10 times larger than it should be. No sign of anything in the air yet. Once the messages were relayed, Team Kakashi increased their speed by a significant margin and rushed toward Kisum's group. Break asterisk. Asuma's team was the obvious choice to take down the massive summons. Tenten immediately activated chakra on a Fuinjutsu seal on her back, and a quiver of arrows and a massive bow were unsealed. She ran up the side of a moderate-sized building and began peppering the centipede with arrows. Only these weren't normal arrows. They had an explosive seal attached to their arrowheads so that when they impacted something it would explode. Her arrows slammed into the centipede with deadly precision and explosive power. The creature crashed into the side of another building under the fury of her archery. The ox charged forward and crushed everything in its path. Yosh, this one is mine. Asuma let him have it. He wanted to kill Akatsuki, not their summoned beasts. Lee was a blur in his neon green Fuinjutsu suit. His weights were off, which made his speed nearly impossible for most people to keep up with, even without using Hachiman. As the ox charged, it attempted to crush Lee underfoot, however Lee was far too fast and dodged. As soon as he completed the dodge, he did a flying roundhouse to the ox's ankle and shattered the delicate bone. The creature brayed with agony as his leg crumpled under him. The green-clad shinobi followed up his first kick by leaping onto the creature and sending a barrage of bone-shattering strikes to the ox's massive head. It swiveled its head around trying to impale Lee on its horns, but it was a futile gesture. Lee was too fast and too strong, and soon the creature dissipated in a puff of smoke after Lee shattered the summoned skull. The centipede wasn't quite finished yet as it tried to snake around the pinpoint-accurate arrows. The bulk of the centipede was too large to avoid the strikes, and it soon met the same fate as the giant ox. All clear here, Asuma reported as they made their way deeper into Omegakure. Break asterisk. Kakashi's Sharinganai detected traps in the buildings as they moved through them. The place was like a maze. However, with the power of his dojutsu, they could be quickly neutralized by a Naruto clone or application of ninjutsu to set them off. After clearing away some paper bombs, he caught sight of their quarry. Kisum grinned and said, Kakashi Hataki. I haven't had a serious fight in a while, let's see if your reputation is accurate. The Asura path opened up with a spray of missiles while Mui launched Kaiten, Karyudan, fire release, fire dragon bullet. Sasuke was already forming hand seals before Mui even finished his jutsu. The young Uchiha finished and used the rain and puddles on the ground to augment Suten, Surei, water release, water wall. The water in the air and ground became a thick wall that stopped the missiles cold and harmlessly exploded against it, sending water sprays in all directions. The bullets of fire were extinguished with minimal effort. Kakashi wasn't one to sit idle and quickly formed Mizu Bunshin. While strictly inferior to Kage Bunshin in almost every way since they only contained a portion of the power and speed of the original, they made for excellent distractions. They didn't split the user's chakra, and with the water all around them it took only a small amount of chakra compared to normal. Kakashi sent his Mizu Bunshin through the water wall as Sasuke lowered the jutsu. While that happened, he went underground using Doton, Shinjuzanshu no Jutsu, Earth-style, Headhunter Jutsu. The ground was pavement, so it made it harder to use the jutsu correctly. To a prodigy like Kakashi, though, it only delayed him slightly. As the water wall came down and Kakashi's Bunshin sought to engage the enemy, Sakura lifted her forearm and kunai screamed out at breakneck speed. Dai brought his blade up and deflected them neatly. His concentration was on the speeding kunai, which meant he didn't detect the chakra presence of Kakashi rush up from underground. The human path, thanks to the Rinnegan, did see it and instantly pounced on Kakashi. Kakashi deflected a chakra rod as he pushed out of the ground. Dai stumbled over the disrupted earth and watched in a daze as Kakashi dueled pain. Kakashi's kunai blurred and met every strike the human path attempted. It didn't take long for Kakashi to create an opening and exploit it with a jarring kick to the Akatsuki's knee. The kneecap exploded, formed the chakra-powered blow, and pain went down. Kakashi darted in and got behind the human path and stabbed a kunai into the back of his head. While that was occurring, Naruto had blazed forward and rushed the Asura path. Buzzsaws erupted from the strange mechanical-looking shinobi and threatened to dice Naruto. However, he was in Sage mode and it didn't take long for him to obliterate pain with Kawazu Kumite. Amazingly, he wasn't fully finished from the blow, merely highly injured. Naruto drew his new chakra katana and sliced through the creature. After finishing the Suiten Jutsu, Sasuke had sped toward his target. The Kaiten user saw the Sharingan wielder rushing towards him and launched Kaiten, Gokakyu no Jutsu, fire release, great fireball technique. Sasuke was a bit miffed about a Kusanin using one of the Uchiha clan staples and ruthlessly used Amaterasu while Mui was finishing his own jutsu. The black flames erupted over Mui's body. The Jonin managed to complete his own ninjutsu, despite the agonizing pain, but it was a simple matter for Sasuke to dodge the incoming attack. Mui threw himself into one of the large puddles of water, desperately trying to put out the flames. Unfortunately for him, the black flames of Amaterasu couldn't be put out by something as mundane as water. He died in agony a few moments later as the flames ripped through him. Kisame had finished dealing with Kakashi's Mizu Bunshin and roared out a challenge: "You want to use Suiten against me?" He spat out a huge quantity of water from his mouth to combine with the rain and the water on the ground to form Suiten, Bakusui Shoha, water release, exploding water colliding wave. The torrent of water was 30 feet high and Kisame rode his own wave as it crashed over the battlefield. Sakura darted out of the way while Naruto rushed through the hand seals to use a Senjutsu-empowered futon, Daitopper, wind release, great breakthrough. The power was magnified many times more than normal and met the crashing waves head-on. Kisame split Naruto's jutsu with Samehada. The blade greedily drank in the chakra, however the sheer size of the futon jutsu meant that most of the water was still blown back except the part that was in Kisame's immediate vicinity. The shark-like shinobi was impressed by the chakra his blade had absorbed. More importantly, he realized that this was the most dangerous fight of his life. Leader Sama had sent 2 of his bodies with him and they were both dead. The arrogant Kaiten user was dead and only Dai Munashi was still up and fighting. Now fully on his guard and loving every minute of the fight, Kisame looked around for whom to focus on first. Break. Obito looked at Nagato's withered body and saw the change in expression. Has something happened? Yes. It seems you were correct, Madara. Kakashi and his team are more formidable than I expected. Obito narrowed his one eye. Can you still defeat them? He could tell Nagato was pondering the matter. They are strong but not invincible. I will begin the next phase of the plan. Obito had gone over it with them. Now the Omega Core Shinobi would charge en masse at the Naruto clones and Konoha forces. They would be stiffened by half of the Zetsu clones and the newly resurrected Paths of Pain. At the same time, the Suna Nin would retreat from Omega Core and strike for Sunad and the Medical Nin. While that was going on, Deidara would begin his aerial assault on the attacking Konoha forces. The man pretending to be Madara simply replied, "Good. Break. Deidara was thrilled that the order to attack had finally been given. He flew on a dragon made of clay ready to rain destruction down on his enemies. It would have been more artistic if he was flying in front of the two paths of pain, but they had overruled him. Style matters more than tactics. Sadly, he does not appreciate my art. The Pretapath was riding a clay owl Deodara had crafted earlier. The Devapath was riding something utterly devoid of any artistic style. The hideous bird creature had 3 short legs and an oversized beak shaped like a drill. In addition, various piercings were scattered across its body. Hideous. They flew high above the towers of a megacore, and as they began to swoop down, 5 drawn birds approached them. Being able to fight another artist is sublime. I will show the world that art is an explosion. Break 3 Naruto Cage Bunshin, a Sasuke Cage Bunshin and a Kakashi Cage Bunshin rode on the drawn animals Sai had created. They had circled the air waiting for Deodara's arrival. Once noticed, they immediately flew to intercept and deal with the powerful explosive user. As the two aerial forces raced to each other, both reacted. The clay dragon spit smaller clay birds that raced toward the clones. The lead Naruto clone responded with Futon, Daitopper, Wind Release, Great Breakthrough. The massive blast of wind easily dispelled the clay bombs. Some were even set off by the buffeting winds. Deodara flew above the jutsu while the Pretapath absorbed it. The Devapath just powered through it with his more solid summon, who was only marginally affected by the jutsu. The Kakashi clone steered his bird, drawing higher, chasing after the one-time Iwa Nin. Sasuke swooped below the fight and threw shuriken by the score at the Pretapath. Black rods deflected him easily enough when suddenly Kakashi abandoned his pursuit of Deodara and appeared behind the Pretapath using Kawarimi with one of the shuriken. Chidori was used due to the lower chakra requirement as he lashed out to strike through the back of Pain. Somehow he had been sensed even though his opponent's back was turned. Pain dodged the lightning blade and Kakashi pushed forward. There wasn't a lot of space to maneuver on the back of a clay owl, and the clone had his target dead to rights. You couldn't block a Chidori. It would go straight through an arm. However, the Pretapath simply used Fujutsu Kyuan, blocking technique Absorption Seal, and the fierce Raiten chakra was absorbed. The Kakashi clone was low on chakra at this point and changed tactics by taking its kunai and ramming it into the wing of the clay construct. Deodara's creation could no longer fly effectively and began spiraling downward with the Kakashi clone and the Pretapath on it. With the advantage of altitude, Deodara's clay dragon continued to spit out miniature bird bombs that homed in on the rest of the Team 7 clones. This time a Naruto clone used Futon, Repusho, Wind Release, Gale Palm, to send them off course. The Devapath lanced out with a chakra rod and skewered one of avian drawings that a Naruto clone was riding. The Naruto clone instantly formed a perfect Rasengan in his palm and thrust it at the Akatsuki leader. The Devapath met the attack head-on with a chakra rod. The swirling force of the Rasengan broke the chakra rod, however it deflected the deadly ball away from Pain. In mid-air, the Naruto clone could do nothing but attempt to block Pain's follow-up punch. And while it was a picture-perfect block, the force of the attack had enough momentum to dissipate the Cage Bunshin. Sasuke was underneath the fight and circled back up and fired Chidori Senbon at the misshapen bird. The attacks hit home and seared through the flesh of the bird, but evidently the beast was sturdy enough to keep flying despite being perforated with Raiten energy. The Devapath circled back around and had the remaining 2 Naruto clones within range. Shinra Tensei, Almighty Push. The Naruto clone countered with Futon, Daitopper, Wind Release, Great Breakthrough. The force of Pain's attack ripped through Naruto's jutsu like it wasn't even there. The implacable force slammed into the bird drawings and the 2 clones. The clones instantly went poof, and it was now only the Sasuke clone. He elevated, chasing after Deodara. As the clay dragon tried to turn to spew more of its clay weaponry, Sasuke's bird stayed in its rear arc. Deodara simply turned around on the clay dragon and deployed a slew of clay spiders. The clone's Sharingan eye whirled, and it knew that the impact of even a near-miss explosion would be enough to shatter the integrity of a Cage Bunshin. Chakra gathered at its feet and he launched himself airborne above the spiders. Now in a free fall, he hastily fired off a Chidori Iso, Chidori Spear, directly for Akatsuki member's heart. Deodara didn't become an S-ranked shinobi merely on the strength of his Kibaku Nendo, explosive clay. He still possessed the reflexes of the top 1% of the shinobi world. He threw himself to the side to avoid the spear and was only grazed on the arm by it. Bastard that hurt. The Sasuke clone was out of chakra and had no more tricks as it began to free fall to the ground far below. It was content in the knowledge that it was part of just the first flying clone attack squadron. The sister squadron was waiting in the wings watching from the ground to see how Deidara would fend off their attacks. Sharingan still whirling the last sight it saw before dissipating and sending the memories back to the original was 5 more ink birds with clones flying toward the battlefield. Break. Iruka's squad had seen little sign of the enemy until a Megacore shinobi started rushing in. Many of them were slaughtered as they met with the Naruto clones' blades and futon jutsu. While the clones meted out fearful slaughter, it only took a scratch to dissipate one, which meant they were being thinned out by attrition. When Summer Megacore Nin broke through the clone screen, Iruka lashed out with Suiten, Daibakufu no Jutsu, water release, great waterfall technique. Normally the A-rank ninjutsu would take an extraordinary amount of chakra, however with all of the rain the drain on his chakra was barely noticeable. The water crashed into the rain shinobi like the fist of an angry god. It shattered the paved ground of the city and killed 2 shinobi while crippling a third. The rest of his team engaged with kunai scrolls and their own attacks, and their first brush with the enemy was an unqualified success. They continued further into a Megacore and saw dead shinobi. Many of them were sliced apart or stabbed, and a few of them were dashed across buildings, which Iruka suspected was done by a high-powered futon jutsu. One of the Chunin whistled. Namika's Sama ripped right through these guys. Iruka turned to him. Stay sharp, Naruto's clones have paved the way, but we can't let our guard down. Iruka's caution was awarded when they heard the sound of impact and rocks being smashed. Above them the Preta path had fallen from the sky and used chakra to somewhat limit the damage of the fall as his feet slammed into the side of a building. The explosive impact sent rocks sailing down as well as the pain. Iruka spotted the Akatsuki robes and quickly sent the communication out. Iruka has encountered an Akatsuki member who just fell from the sky. Pain crashed into the ground. He was injured but not critically so. Kunai were thrown at him in a barrage and he rolled under them and deflected others with a chakra rod. Iruka could tell by his movements that this was a dangerous opponent. Well, that and the fact he survived a fall at what amounted to terminal velocity. Iruka snapped out Suiten, Suiben, water release, water whip. Using one in each hand he charged forward while signaling his squad to provide support. Break. Kisame knew he was facing incredibly dangerous opponents. He took a page out of Kakashi's playbook and brought forth several Mizu Bunshin. As he was doing that, Sakura used Magen, Jubakusatsu, demonic illusion, tree binding death. He was quickly enthralled with the genjutsu, however his loyal blade Samehada pushed some of the chakra it had eaten earlier into Kisame and disrupted the jutsu in a fraction of a second. Sasuke was annoyed that he had used Amaterasu on the Kaiten user. Even with Itachi's eyes he couldn't use the black flames multiple times in a row. Kisame was the true threat at this point. Sasuke saw the Mizu Bunshin and quickly engaged them with taijutsu. Since the Mizu Bunshin didn't retain the speed and power like a Kage Bunshin, he made quick work of his opponents. Naruto had dropped out of Sage mode and drew his katana, ready to do battle with what many considered the most dangerous swordsman alive. Kakashi dashed toward the real Kisame, who let loose with Suiten, Suiruden no Jutsu, water release, water dragon jutsu, at the charging Kakashi. The water dragon was incredibly massive and had the force of a freight train as it sped off to obliterate Hatake. Kakashi countered with Doton, Doryuheiki, earth release, mud wall. Solid stone erupted from the ground and stopped the water dragon cold. Doton tended to beat Suiten and Kakashi made good use of the elemental advantage. Naruto came in swinging with a lightning fast slash that Kisame parried. Kisame was strong and actually shoved Naruto away. The Jinchuriki had been used to being far stronger than his opponents, and it was something of a shock to be moved so easily. Granted, he wasn't in Sage mode, but still that was an unwelcome surprise. He was not deterred long as he let loose with a blisteringly fast counterattack. Dai Munashi could barely follow the swordplay despite being an expert in Kenjutsu himself. He decided to go after Sakura as the only one he might have a chance again. The missing nin from Kiri rushed the Genjutsu specialist. Sakura ducked underneath the first swing and countered with a palm strike. She was actually slightly too far away to hit her target. That was part of the plan since she had activated the Fuinjutsu seal in the palm of her suit to let out a blast of concentrated sulfuric acid. Being at such close quarters gave Dai almost no time to react, and as he dodged away, the acid slammed into his ribs and ate through clothing, skin and flesh. He screamed in agony but was too good of a shinobi to drop his weapon. Instead he slashed again at Sakura, who blocked his blade with her forearm. The blade ricocheted off her left arm like it was striking a solid wall. Her left palm had a Fuinjutsu seal as well, and it drilled Senbon at vicious speed directly into Dai's chest. He gurgled once and fell still. Naruto didn't want to use up his Senjutsu-powered clones just yet, so he tapped into the fox's power and covered himself in the red chakra cloak. In his next clash with Kisame, the sword ripped free of its white bindings and seemed to come alive. Naruto could feel the demonic chakra leak from him and go into the sword. He backed up in alarm. Kisame grinned viciously, displaying all of his shark teeth. Samehada once more. Kakashi drove in close and avoided the living blade. However, with Kisame's longer reach and sharp reflexes, he was stymied. He quickly thought about his options. Ninjutsu was apparently out. Genjutsu had seemed ineffective. Kamui was an option, but he didn't want to put any more strain on his Sharingan. Sasuke fired Chidori Senbon that were also consumed by the living blade. Annoying. The three circled Kisame. If they couldn't pierce his defenses individually, then surely they would succeed altogether. Hoshigaki didn't like his odds and decided to change them in his favor. And with all the water around him, it would be even easier than normal. Suiro Samiadori no Jutsu. Water prison shark dance technique. The water falling from the sky and the water on the ground coalesced into a massive watery dome that engulfed all four members of Kakashi's team. Kisame fused with Samehada to become even more shark-like and lost his Akatsuki robes. He wasn't done yet either. He then used Kuchio's no Jutsu, summoning technique. Sharks by the dozen appeared in the water and immediately sped towards the surprised Team 7. Iruka lashed out with his water whips, allowing them to extend 20 feet in front of him. The Akatsuki member who had fallen from the sky dodged the deadly strikes as he moved toward Iruka. The squad with him continued their rather ineffectual barrage of kunai. The man's chakra rod was deflecting the attacks effortlessly. When the enemy got within 5 feet, Iruka let this jutsu go and thrust his palm out and activated the Fuinjutsu seal. A hail of kunai thrust forward with speeds faster than nearly any shinobi had the strength to throw. At such a close distance, Pain wasn't fully able to block everything. Vital points were protected, however. One kunai slammed deep into a shoulder while another slashed through the side. Anko's husband had hoped for more damage, or at least a flinch. He got neither. Pain ignored his wounds and pushed the chakra rod out further from his body as he attempted to skewer the Konoha shinobi. Iruka evaded the blow by quickly stepping to the side. But the attack was immediately followed up by Pain's other hand coming in fast for a powerful blow. He blocked the blow with his arm and felt the chakra drain out of the Fuinjutsu seals on that arm. If he didn't have the suit on, the attack would likely have broken it. Seeing the danger of fighting in close quarters, he hastily used Kawarimi to get away and then hastily created several water clones who rushed his opponent. He hoped they would distract his opponent long enough to finish his jutsu. Suiten, Suiden no Jutsu, water release, water bullet technique. Iruka spat water with immense force. The attack was normally B-ranked, however with the water everywhere it made it easier to use and struck with the power of an A-ranked jutsu. Instead of successfully putting down or wounding the enemy, it did nothing. His foe simply raised his hands and the chakra flowing in the water cut off completely. The water simply trickled down to the ground. Damn it, we can't get him at range. He reviewed his options as his water clones perished. His squad had a weapon user, a Hyuga, and a ninjutsu user whose element was unfortunately Kaiten. Iruka barked out an order and the young Hyuga charged in with him. This is going to hurt. Break. Yura was pleased that Kankuro believed his lies. Lord Sasori's plan was coming together nicely. He didn't know the details of Omegacore's defense, however he knew that the elite shinobi were now tied down fighting. It made now the perfect time to strike. He sent the signal to his shinobi and watched as Kankuro suppressed a nervous tremor. The young man was clearly petrified of fighting Konoha despite the clear tactical edge they would have. There was only about 50 to 60 shinobi around the medical camp in reserve. They would outnumber the enemy by 4 to 1 and they would have surprise on their side. Yura took his command squad and got into position. Before they could, a Kunoichi in the Konoha Medical Corps said, "What are you doing here? Has the enemy broken through?" "We haven't heard of any." The Suna commander struck without warning. His kunai flashed and stabbed out straight for her heart. He was surprised when the blade didn't pierce his opponent's armor. The strange suits that all of the Konoha shinobi were wearing had turned his perfect strike aside. The Kunoichi stumbled back from the blow and hastily warned the Leaf shinobi through the radio. Instantly all of the Suna forces began assaulting their allies. Futon Jutsu lashed out along with kunai and explosive tags. The Puppet Brigade unleashed their creations as well. He saw Kankuro's strange hybrid snake-like puppet wrap around the Kunoichi he had failed to kill. The construct squeezed and the Fuinjutsu seals bled chakra and then collapsed altogether. With nothing left to prevent the crushing embrace, the shinobi's spine snapped and she went limp. Kankuro redirected Saraizurinku to another enemy as the Leaf shinobi desperately tried to recover from the vicious surprise attack. It hadn't gone exactly the way Yura had planned. The Fuinjutsu suits that the Konoha shinobi wore made him hard to take down. And already he could see Suna shinobi killed by the deadly surprises they had sealed away. And this was before their main obstacle presented itself. Ah, there she is. Tsunade Senju gave a battle cry and then obliterated a spider-like puppet with a chakra-enhanced punch. Her angry voice rose above the din of battle as she summoned Katsuyu. Break asterisk. Kakashi had taught his team never to play around with an enemy. He had taught them to kill them as swiftly and as efficiently as possible. In this particular fight, the plan had been not to use their most deadly and possibly chakra-draining attacks. The goal behind that thought was to save it for what Kakashi feared was the true threat, the Rinnegan user. However, given their circumstances now, it was time to take the gloves off. Kakashi signaled his team with a precise flare of chakra as the sharks dove toward all 4 members of Team 7. The sharks were summoned creatures, which meant they were susceptible to genjutsu. Sakura flashed a few hand signs and immediately the sharks became confused. Some tore into each other while others went directly at the original summoner. Naruto popped one of his senjutsu clones and felt nature energy infuse him. With that power he easily tore apart the sharks that came near. Sasuke grinned at the chakra flare. Susanoo was his ace weapon and he eagerly created the chakra construct. The sharks attempted to gnaw on the purplish chakra but were swept aside easily. The construct's blade swept out at the transformed Kisame, who had to hastily dive to avoid the blade. Kakashi didn't dare use Raiten under the water for fear of electrocuting his allies as well. He had seals placed on the bottom of his shoes which were basically compressed air. The idea was to be able to jump to incredible heights or even pantomime flying for a limited amount of time. Underwater they would work just as well to rocket him next to Kisame. Using a trickle of chakra he activated the modified storage seals and was pushed through the water at incredible speeds. He blew by the summoned sharks, only briefly lashing out with his kunai before pushing past and straight for Kisame. Kisame was struggling to dodge the Susanoo blade underwater. The water did nothing to slow the blade of chakra. Hatake wasn't sure if he couldn't absorb chakra while fused with Samehada or if the ultimate ability of the Sharingan was simply not susceptible. Either way, Kisame was forced to dodge away from the blade several times as Kakashi approached. To make matters even worse for him, one of the sharks Sakura had put under a genjutsu nearly bit off his leg. As Kisame dodged, he lashed out with Mizu Tatsumaki, tornado of water. The water rotated impossibly fast and sped toward Kakashi. Kakashi adjusted the angle of his approach and was able to dodge the Suten Jutsu. He then used an underwater shunshin while Kisame was distracted by the Susanoo. Now within range, Kakashi used his own Sharingan. Kamui warped the water around Kisame and threatened to drag him into it. The shark-like shinobi thrashed and pulled away from the swirling vacuum. His strength was impressive, meaning only some of his skin was ripped off. Now completely unbalanced, he was unable to do much when Sasuke's chakra construct ran him through. Blood swirled in the water as blood pulled out from Kirigakure no Kaijin, monster of the hidden mist. Wasting no further time, Kakashi rocketed in just as Naruto swam forward. Naruto's Rasengan took Kisame in the ribs while Kakashi's kunai slammed into his eye and into the brain. Around him the gigantic water sphere lost cohesion and collapsed. Kisame's body twitched and he and his blade separated. Kakashi quickly decapitated the head and stored it away in a storage scroll and did the same with Samehada. The job was far from done, however. The radio chatter filtered in. The Omega-Core Nin were attacking all along the front. Things were still going well, however the news had just come through that Sunagakure had betrayed them. Naruto cursed under his breath. Naruto, use your modified Harasshan to return to base camp and bring up reinforcements to deal with Suna. Then return once you are sure you have sufficient forces. Naruto still had some Senjutsu chakra left, which was a very good thing. Using his bastardized form of his father's jutsu was chakra intensive. He flipped through the hand seals and in an orange flash he was gone. Break. Asuma was pissed when he heard the news about Suna's treachery. Those bastards were going to make his revenge more difficult. Should we return back to camp? Tenten asked. Asuma shook his head. No, we are going on. Kakashi will give us orders if we are needed. The 4 elite Jonin continued deeper in Omegakure. Neji's Byakugan kept them safe from the numerous paper bombs that were buried in the streets. They didn't make it far before they were attacked. Asuma grinned viciously as he saw who he was fighting. 2 Akatsuki robed members. They didn't match the description of any of the known Akatsuki members, but they would do. The first member looked oddly mechanical and he started their battle by launching a quintet of missiles. Sarutobi quickly smashed them aside with Futon, Repusho, Wind Release, Gale Palm. The other Akatsuki member raced forward with a chakra rod in his hand. Lee glided forward to intercept and easily dodged the strike and responded with a spinning roundhouse. His kick was blocked, but his opponent skidded back from the force of the Taijutsu master's blow. Tenten fired a half-dozen kunai with ninja wired attached. They swept wide around the human path with the goal of wrapping her opponent in the wire. The enemy slid below the thrown kunai and slashed out with the chakra rod against Lee. Lee slammed his elbow into the side of the chakra rod, snapping it, and then attempted to hit his opponent with a back fist. Pain ducked under the blow and their taijutsu duel began in earnest. The Asura path was undeterred by his missiles failing and sought to take the fight into close quarters. There he met Neji Hyuga. Neji had only grown in skill since becoming a Jonin. The genius label was a correct one and his mastery of the gentle fist was second to none. The mechanical pain was dismantled underneath the deadly barrage of attacks. Asuma helped the young Hyuga finish his opponent off and then did the same to Lee's opponent. Lee could have wrapped up his fight sooner, but he had not yet decided to access Hachiman. The bearded Jonin took great relish in digging his trench knives into the back of the bastards who killed Kurenai. Yes, they weren't the ones who did it personally, but it was their Kami-forsaken organization. His triumphant victory was short-lived as the ground trembled with moderately distant explosions. Looking to the sky, his team saw the mad bomber of Iwa raining death down on the other Konoha elements behind them. It appeared their aerial defense plan had failed. Asuma asked for orders and then the radio cut out completely. What should we do? Lee asked. Push on and find the rest of the Akatsuki. I can protect a small area from bombs with my Futon Jutsu, but our forces are too scattered for it to make much of a difference. Tenten and Neji shared a grim look. The Fuinjutsu suits would help some of their comrades survive incidental damage and nearby explosions, but a direct hit would overload them. Between that and Suna's betrayal, the butcher's bill would be high. Break. Aruka let out a grunt of pain. They had managed to kill the chakra-absorbing pain, but it had been a close thing. He had taken a chakra rod through the shoulder before the enemy had finally succumbed. He knew that he had pushed his training to the very limit. While he would never be as strong as Naruto or Kakashi, he knew he was a solid Jonin. He had a good squad with him and all of them had Fuinjutsu suits which gave them a sizable edge. Even so, they had nearly been defeated. Communications had been cut off and the field of battle had fallen into chaos. Suna fought Konoha while clay bombs rained from the sky. His squad insisted they return to Tsunade and get his shoulder healed. After the battle he just fought, he didn't have the energy to argue. At least Anko is safe in Konoha. Break. Kankuro knew it had been an idiotic idea. He had known it, but who was he to go against his old sensei, the Kazekage? Tsunade was a monster on the battlefield. One punch from her meant annihilation. Several Futon specialists threw wind jutsu after wind jutsu at her, trying to keep her away from the fragile bodies of their comrades. While they did their best to slow the impossibly strong Sanin, the puppeteer core tried to bring down the massive slug. On that front, Kankuro felt some progress was being made. Senbon, explosive tags, physical damage from blades and spears from various mechanical constructs were ripping into the slug. It wasn't fully clear how much progress was being made because as pieces were sliced off they formed into their own slugs. It must take chakra to do all that. Not even a Sanin has an infinite supply. He redirected his mole, snake hybrid puppet to intercept an enemy Chunin who got a bit too close for comfort. The shinobi had a chakra scalpel in his hand and was almost on top of him. His puppet attempted to slam into him, but the enemy nin dodged to the side. Kankuro's fingers danced and the puppet hurtled back at speeds that a normal animal could never mimic. It slammed into the medic's side and Fuinjutsu seals flared in response. Those fucking seals, I bet the bastard gets up afterwards too. The uniforms the Konoha shinobi wore gave them a second lease on life. It didn't grant them invincibility, but the seals could stop attacks that would normally kill at least once. And their masks made them immune to the various smokes and toxins that filled the air. The only one who didn't have a mask on was Tsunade, and the idea of poison affecting her was laughable. Things weren't going terribly, but Kankuro had hoped that they would have made more progress. It was only a matter of time before the other Konoha shinobi went back to reinforce their medical staff. As if summoned by Kankuro's pessimistic thoughts, disaster struck. In a flash of orange, a new foe appeared right next to Tsunade. As soon as he appeared, he summoned 100 clones. Kankuro felt terror flush through his body. It was Naruto Namikaze, a Jinchuriki like his brother Gaara had been. 100 clones appeared and half-charged with blades drawn, while others fought wind jutsu with wind jutsu. It disgusted Kankuro how a single man's clones could jutsu to a standstill the elemental specialist of his homeland. But the Jinchuriki wasn't done with just that. He slammed his hand into the ground and a massive white cloud of smoke sprang into existence and then filtered away, leaving behind a massive magenta toad wielding a Sasumata. Kankuro raced toward Yura and shouted at him, "We have to retreat. We can't take on Tsunade and Naruto." Yura shook his head dismissively. "Don't give up yet. We have numbers and you are more skilled than you know. You are the son of a Kazekage and the student of another Kazekage. Fight with everything you have." Crazy bastard. We are so dead. Break. Nagato frowned. The Paths of Pain were not doing well in their current split formation. The abilities of the Nine Tails and that of his team were expected. That had been the entire point behind splitting his paths, in order to see all of their abilities before the final confrontation. Any damage and lost chakra that they suffered before then would also be a bonus. What he had not counted on was the general ability of the Konoha forces. The uniforms they wore were lined with Fuinjutsu formula that gave his enemies a unique advantage. And then there was the team that included Asuma, the son of the Sandaime. Not only was he stronger than reports had suggested, but his team was quite lethal. The green-clad warrior and the Hyuga had skill that nearly matched his Deva Path's close combat prowess. I will send 3 of the Paths together with half of the Zetsu clones against Sarutobi's team. A few summons added in will be enough to ensure victory. Nagato kept up his confident mien. But after seeing everything through his Rinnegan eyes, he was no longer so certain of his victory. Break. Naruto surveyed the battlefield in satisfaction. His clones and now Gameiken were enough to turn the tide of battle here. Unfortunately, the aerial one had not gone well. Jiraiya's old student had some strange ability to completely block attacks with sheer force and keep that force hurtling forward. The attack had shattered the ink birds and the clones with ease. I'll be back soon, guys, but I have to deal with that one and Deidara. Naruto had dropped out of Sage mode again, but even without his Senjutsu senses, the flyers were easy to spot. He avoided the battle around him with his superior speed. His eyes scanned 100 potential threats at once. As he ran, he saw glimpses of the battle. It was made more complex by the dissipation of clones. However, with his clone training, he was able to follow the battle well. The massive toad and slug were swinging the battle remarkably. Gameiken had mashed the snake puppet quite thoroughly. The slug had drawn much of the attention earlier, and now without the dangerous puppet to vex her, she was free to spit her acid on living shinobi instead of just puppets. And without the futon specialists harassing and pushing away Tsunade, there was no one left to stop her brutal assault. There we go, now to clear you out of the skies. Naruto flashed through the hand seals for futon, Sora Tonkachi, wind release, sky hammer. The air creaked and moaned as it folded in on itself and prepared to smash the enemy out of the sky. He made sure to angle the enormous wind jutsu away from his allies. Pain felt the chakra grow and immediately sensed the danger. He was aided in this by the report Kisame shared from the battle outside of Takagakure, as well as his own enhanced Rinnegan sight. Shinra Tensei, Almighty Push. And there above the skies of Omegakure the two abilities clashed. Break. The The attack has gone just as Fuyu had planned. They had placed the Fuinjutsu sealed bombs throughout the city. They had detonated without a hitch and the city had been engulfed in flames. The samurai stationed in the palace had rushed out to fight whoever had attacked the city, and in the confusion the Kinkaku force had slipped in. To be sure, it hadn't been without its missteps, but the kinetic jutsu allowed them to hit as hard as Tsunade. Combining the kinjutsu with their already lethal abilities meant that both the samurai stationed here and shinobi guardians hadn't lasted long. She had lost 7 of her shinobi during the fight. That had been more than she had hoped, but not more than she had planned for. The fire daimyo was dead, as was all of his family in the palace. Soon the Raikage would prop up the puppet daimyo and Hinokuni would hopefully descend into civil war. Fuyu personally had her doubts that this would break Konoha, but it would be a start. At the very least, supplies would begin to dwindle. Food, kunai, ink for Fuinjutsu, parchment and other essential shinobi items would have to be rationed. Now was time for the second stage of her plan. It was time to attack Konoha itself. She had made sure her best infiltrators weren't in the thick of the fighting. Even with all of the advantages she had stacked in her favor, surprise would still be critical. And she had a lot of advantages. Many of their best fighters would be in a megacore. Almost certainly the Namikaze's team would be there. No doubt they would bring plenty of their sensor shinobi to scout for traps and hidden surprises. She had certainly done so when she had probed through the forest surrounding Konoha with the Kumogakure invasion force. Without sensors, a shinobi army could blindly walk into ruin. Word of the fire daimyo's fall would also reach the village, sowing even more confusion. Normal patrols would be disrupted as the Hokage would immediately begin sending shinobi to investigate and assist the populace. Likely they would also send additional shinobi to the borders in case the strike on the capital was a precursor to another invasion. And in the hours after all of this was occurring, Fuyu's team would strike. They had their targets. Their primary focuses were the Hokage, Shikaku, Nara and Danzo. The Hokage was on the list for obvious reasons. The Nara clan leader was an intellectual giant who had probably been the mastermind of numerous efforts to confuse and confound the other villages. And the former Raikage always considered Danzo to be the true snake of Konoha. He had thwarted the first attack on the capital of Hinokuni despite being atrociously outnumbered. Taking those 3 down would hamper Konoha's war effort considerably. Those attacks were likely suicide missions. But every good attack needed a diversion. And the bomb tactics they had just used weren't going to be possible in a shinobi village. Instead, they needed a more conventional attack. A strike that would further thin the forces around their targets, an attack that Fuyu would do herself. I'm going to gut you, Mitarashi. I could choose anyone for this distraction, but your death will allow me to go to mine in peace. That will be it for this video. If you want more, comment down below, like, subscribe. And see you guys later.